Hello there, everybody. I hope you've all had a wonderful work week. So if you're of an age, you've heard of the Pentagon Papers, or maybe Watergate. If you're a bit younger, there's the Edward Snowden revelations, or WikiLeaks and Julian Assange. And of course, most recently we have the Panama Papers. Now, all of these were scandals that were revealed by the unintended disclosure of a big pile of documents. Well, was this past week Google's Panama Papers? Anyway, this week, the reported leak of more than 2,000 pages of internal documentation from Google sheds light on how the most powerful and certainly the most trade secret protected search engine in the world actually works. Has Google been lying for years about the way we're supposed to be optimizing for Google search? Are these documents even relevant anymore after Google recently changed its search algorithm yet again? Or as Google's AI looks to replace the way we search for information altogether, do we even care? In the modern world, does it actually matter who writes content, not just what domain the content sits on? Or is this whole thing a little more like Apple's AntennaGate? You know, back in the day where Apple was accused of bad signal reception on their iPhone 4, and it was a huge conspiracy and controversy, and people were up in arms and then ultimately went, meh, it's probably Verizon's fault. Anyway, you want to know a little more? Well, let's search around a little bit. This is a few minutes of what's new in marketing that might help you lead your business's strategy. Let's search for Google on Google and Google the controversy. And let's roll. Hello everybody, Robert Rose here with What's New in Marketing. It is What's New in Marketing, but most importantly, it's something important in marketing that we think may help you become a better leader. And if we can help you or your team with content marketing services like custom training, consultation, ongoing implementation, or just more arms and legs to help you get stuff done, get on over to contentmarketinginstitute.com, fill out that form, and let's talk about it. Let's see if we can help you. Anyway, this week, an explosive leak of thousands of internal documents claimed to reveal an unprecedented look into the inner workings of Google's search algorithm. It suggests that the tech giant may have been just a skosh less than truthful about its operations for years and years. So far, as of the recording of this video, well, Google has confirmed the veracity of the documents, but has only commented saying that they would, quote, caution against making inaccurate assumptions about search based on an out-of-context, outdated, or incomplete information. Well, of course they would say that. Rand Fishkin, one of the OGs in the SEO industry, wrote that his source provided him with 2,500 pages of these documents. The intention behind sharing this leak was to challenge what the source described as the quote-unquote lies propagated by Google employees about the search algorithm's functionality. According to Rand, the documents detail Google's search API and what information is accessible to its employees. Now, unless you're really an SEO geek here, the details here are way more technical, so it's not that useful in reading the actual documents themselves. At least that's what I found. So it's important to make note that the documents themselves don't confirm that Google does anything specifically for search rankings. But what they do is highlight at least, well, at some point in the company's history, the types of data that Google collects from websites, users, and other data gathering as a way of divining insight into prioritizing the information it does use. In other words, the best metaphor I can think of for this is a little like getting the ingredients, including all the secret ones, to Coca-Cola, but not getting any of the amounts of those ingredients. So, what's our take? Well, I couldn't help myself because the first thing I thought to do was to take these highly technical documents that didn't make any sense to me, run it through Google's Gemini, and have it tell me what it says. Spoiler alert. It was pretty underwhelming. I mean, basically it said in a lot more words, of course, that this appears to be a document describing Google's search API and various factors it takes into consideration for search. No big aha moments there, but again, I'm not a prompt engineer, so therefore maybe I'm doing something wrong. Anyway, in looking at some of the analysis coming out of Rand Fishkin's work here, well, there's some really interesting tidbits. So it would appear that clicks, long versus short clicks especially, do have some relevance. In other words, did the user click on your site, search, and then stay on your site, or did they bounce right back to Google and search again? That's a long click versus a short click. Apparently, they play a big role in ranking. Also, user data from Chrome also appears to be among Google's most powerful ranking signals. In other words, your search results are almost certainly different than mine. Google employs safe lists for sensitive topics like COVID-19, elections, and travel to control what sites appear in search. Now, this, I think, is the most interesting finding of all. And if there is any news here, I think this might be the most problematic for Google. Basically, they're manually editorializing the results of search. Like it or not, that's editorializing. That means they're a media company, not just a platform. Maybe you knew this, but it was news to me that Google uses quality raters, people that they hire to get the quality of content and rate it. I mean, maybe I'm behind the times, but I just didn't even know that they did that. And Google apparently uses this feedback and ratings in its ranking systems, not just as a training set. Things that we used to really worry about, things like PageRank, anchor text, all those kinds of things where you make sure that your text and your link is really descriptive. Well, apparently, according to these documents, those are losing influence as opposed to the more user-centric signals. And lastly, Rand's analysis found that building a brand and generating search demand is way more critical than ever for SEO success. Now, I would also be remiss if I didn't just, pull out the cold water in the bucket here to throw at this a little. Even hours after this broke, well, there's some sanity checking going on here where people over at Search Engine Journal, they seem to be thinking that it's important to keep an open mind about this data because there's a lot about it that is unconfirmed. That would mean you kind of believe what Google said in its confirmation of the veracity of the documents. In other words, it's not that we really have the secret ingredients of search, but rather just a more detailed way that applications need to talk to Google in some way. And this is sort of helping you with that syntax. So they caution at this point, probably not a good idea to take anything from this data as actionable SEO advice. So what's my take? Well, I think this is ultimately going to end up a little more like Intennigate than it is the Pentagon Papers. I mean, I suspect in the coming days, even by the time you watch this video on Friday, we'll know a lot more about whether or not this is a deeply held reveal of Google Search's secret Kentucky Fried Chicken original recipe, or whether it's basically revealing the ingredients of new Coke. Interesting, not very tasty, and quite honestly, old news. And that, well, that's a few minutes of what's new in marketing. Remember, it's your story to tell. Go search for it. You'll figure out the algorithm, and then you'll tell it well. I'll see you next week.